On to our next presenter, which is Jens Ellebæk. He's a consulting offering manager at Configit. And Jens is going to do a presentation where he will cover a use case and say how can configuration lifecycle management approach can turn your sales configuration process into competitive advantage. And that will be pretty interesting and hear, how we can now see from another point of view, but again, also how the customer user experience also tied in together. So I would like to welcome Jens, who is in the studio with me. So Jens, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much, Shahid. So, as Shahid says, I'll be talking a little bit about how you can improve your sales and simply by improving your customer experience. And I'll do that through a number of different use cases, focusing on configuration lifecycle management, but also focusing a little bit on existing customers and other projects that I've been working on. But first of all, let's look at the state of customer experience and what that really looks like. And according to Accenture, who did a study back in 2021, I believe, then 80% of their brands think that they deliver a superior customer experience. So why are we even here? Why do we talk about this? It seems like it's a little bit of a waste of time as so many people already do it. But again, according to the same study, then only 8% of their customers actually agree with this statement. So there is a massive disconnect between what the customers expect of you as a brand and what you maybe see from your own perspective. And why is that a problem? Well, according to McKinsey, then you can, by focusing on your B2B customer experience, then you can bring many different benefits, but among other, the interesting one, 10 to 15% revenue growth. You can increase your client satisfaction scores. You can improve your employee satisfaction and employee performance. And at the same time, reduce your operational cost by 10 to 20%. So that's quite significant and something to really strive for and focus on. So let's look at why there is such a big difference between the 80% who believes they deliver good customer experience and why their customers don't really agree. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what customer experience is, because customer experience is very often directly confused with user experience. And you can say when you talk user experience, that's a matter of interacting with a piece of software, interacting with a tool. How does the tool react to what you do, and is it intuitive to work with? Customer experience is so much more. It covers everything. So it also covers the documents that are available on your website. It covers whenever a customer talks to your sales reps, or it covers when your customers work with your manufacturing department for delivery services. It covers if a customer participates in a webinar or a session like the one today. So it's every time you have some kind of collaboration. And to put it a little bit in some direct terms, then according to Forbes, then the customer experience is simply the cumulative impact of multiple touch points over the course of a customer's interaction with an organization. Of course, what that means is that it's every time from the customer starts looking at you as a vendor to buy your products, all the way through the process of sales, they sign the contract with you, you agree that this is what they need to do to have delivered, they get the product delivered, they start working with the product, they receive service along the way, the product gets matured, it may receive updates along the way, and at some point, they're ready to decommission the product, throw it out, get something new in. They will touch upon you all the path through this process. So I would like to talk now a little bit about how customer experience work in relation to sales, and very much focused, you can say, from the sales perspective and going forward. But first of all, what is it the customers expect of you? Well, the customers, they really expect competent guidance. They want to know about your products. They want to know that the products they receive are the right ones, and they want to be guided through that process. But they also want quick turnaround on offers. They don't want to wait. You shouldn't have a call with a customer and then 3 weeks later come and say, oh, by the way, what we talked about 3 weeks ago is this. Don't you agree? No, it should come quickly and swiftly. They want the correct price. You shouldn't come back in 3 weeks as well and say, well, by the way, the price is 20% higher than what I promised you before. the product should be, or the quote should be complete, and they should be, of course, correct. It should cover all the stuff that the customer needs. If you followed the tech talk earlier by Stefan, then he also talked about, well, you both buy a product, but you may also buy services and you buy some maintenance over time. That also needs to be considered. And then the customers, of course, want you to deliver on your promise. That was also one of the topics that Myla from Emerson pulled out yesterday in her presentation, that we accidentally sell some products on our website that we can't deliver or we can't produce. That's simply not good for the customer experience. After the customer bought the product, well, then they also have expectations to you because they want intuitive products, products that are easy to work with, products that solve their problems, and products that actually, gets better for them over time. They want support throughout the product's lifetime. It's not enough to say, well, now we've delivered this product and then we're not going to talk to you again. No, they need to be able to call you. But very often they also want to have follow-up sessions. They want to be able to come back with their feedback on your product. They want to give you details on how they feel to work with this. So in essence, what the customer expects is that they expect you to care about where they are and what they're doing. So what can help you drive this customer experience? Well, among other, you should support the customer in making the choices. That can be in many different ways. It can be with good documentation or good introduction or good description of your products, but it could also be just by having a configurator that helps them and guides them in the right direction along the way. You should only present the customer with relevant products and selections. There's no reason to expose a product that cannot be sold to that certain customer. No, it should be something that they actually can buy. As I said, you shouldn't let them wait. You should be able to provide them with a complete and final offer whenever they ask for it. You should meet them at their level. I think that was also part of what Dave talked about, that you need to talk to the kind of person that you're working with. You need to talk to the people who are sitting behind the screens. It may be people with very different backgrounds. Then you also need to follow up proactively. You shouldn't disappoint the customer. There may be scenarios like the semiconductor shortages where you actually cannot deliver the product. Well, then you need to have a plan. You need to proactively feed that back to the customer and make sure that they get something that will still exceed their expectations to you. And then finally, you need to support the customer during after sales and service. So throughout this process, you really need to be aware of what the customer asks for and help them in that path. So who is responsible for customer experience? Well, as Accenture defines it here quite clearly, then every person in your organization needs to be unified in their approach and 100% customer obsessed. Everyone, no matter where you are in an organization, you will have an impact on the customer experience. It doesn't matter if you provide technical documentation of a component, or if you're the one driving the product out to the customer for installation, or if you're sitting in help desk, or if you're direct sales, you will have a direct impact on the customer experience and will have an impact on how the customer sees you. And then you might ask, so what role does CLM play in this? Because obviously I've just said that it's your employees who are the key drivers to make sure that customer experience is heightened in your company. Well, you can't improve your customer experience by technology alone. That's a fact. But what you can do is you can use technology, and in this case, configuration lifecycle management, as an enabler simply to provide information and provide the right details to your employees, but also to your customers, and thereby make sure that the right details and right information is provided to the customers when needed. Some key things that I want to focus on here as well. It supports the full life cycle of the product. So it's all the parts from you start designing your product, when it goes through engineering, when it goes to market, through sales, when it gets manufactured, but also when the product gets delivered and serviced at the customer side. That is also part of CLM. By joining the view of sales, marketing, engineering, manufacturing, and service, then you get a holistic view and you make sure that the product that you actually define is both complete and consistent and according to the rules that are required. It allows for product capabilities to be released in different markets at different times. You may have different options that are not yet ready to be shipped. Well, then you wouldn't release it in a market yet. And then you can really provide a dedicated user experience based on user groups or channels. It matters if a customer comes in through the public website or if they come in through and sits with your direct sales team, or as Dave presented before, if they come in through a 3D metaverse, well, then you need to provide an experience that actually covers that scenario. And a few topics that I want to point to as well is how this can actually support you within the organization, because a key part of this is really that it can help you break down the silos between the different functions in relation to your configuration knowledge. And what that gives you is, of course, the ability to work on the same, making sure that you don't release something that doesn't uphold the rules and the constraints that live in the different areas of the business. But at the same time, it also ensures the configuration logic is interpreted in the same way, no matter if you come from the public website or from the CPQ tool or from any other system. And thereby it reduces significantly the need for dual maintenance and of course reduces the cost by that. But let's look into the use cases that I've chosen to bring along here. And the first one I want to talk about is what I call the correct offering. Because the typical scenario is really that you, as a manufacturing company, you have an engineering department that define what products can be produced and how they're set to, how they're combined and how they're possible to be built in the end. But the offer may vary significantly by market. It can be through legal constraints or through validations that have not yet taken place, or your documentation may not be ready. You may be ready to ship it to the US, but you don't have German translations, for instance, stuff like that. And besides that, then you have a sales and marketing team who have quite specific definitions of how they want to offer this product towards the market, what text, what translations, what content do they want to present, what kind of bundles do they want to offer in this market. And I'm sure you all know this drawing here where you can say, well, engineering defines the valid product combinations and how the product can be produced. But sales and marketing may have a very different view of what products they actually want to sell. So these two circles, the more they overlap, of course, the better. But in this scenario here, of course, eccentric, but it's actually only where the two circles overlap that defines what you can actually sell in the market. So how do you make sure that sales and marketing don't go out and sell something that engineering hasn't authorized? So how does CLM and configuration lifecycle management help with this? Well, among other, it allows the users from engineering and sales, and of course also manufacturing and service, to work and collaborate on authoring the models in the same tool. Thereby you make sure that no matter what rule you define in sales and marketing, then that will still overlap and be aligned with the rules that are defined in engineering. Through effectivity, then it's then possible for sales and marketing to say, well, I'm not ready to position this feature in a certain market. Well, then I can just wait until my documentation or whatever it is I need is ready and then roll it into the market at that point. Another example could also be, so if you're a dealer who wants to sell a tractor, if you're located in Nevada, there are very different legal constraints if you try to sell that tractor to a customer in California. The system will be able to guide you on that path as well. Because the CLM configurators will ensure that only the valid options that both fulfill the engineering and sales and marketing rules will be offered in the configurator in the end. Besides that, a key advantage that you get as an organization is that by joining these views, well, then you can analyze your offering for both over and under specification, making sure that you don't maintain engineered options that are never sold, and making sure you don't maintain product documentation for options that can never be chosen in the configurator in the end. The second use case I want to talk about is time to market, because of course that's also a key part of this. As soon as your engineering department have defined a new feature, they want to offer this to the market so that it can start driving revenue. So how do you really do that? Well, you want to offer the customer with the latest and greatest. That's also what your customers expect. And then you also want to be able to learn from these previous versions of your product, learn from what you have already gained for insights from your configurations, what customers have chosen earlier, and thereby optimize the life cycle of your product. And where does CLM help you here? Well, among other, as again, it increases and improves the collaboration between engineering and sales simply because they work in the same system. They work within the same area, and thereby they can look at each other's constraints and rules and thereby see what can I really offer and what should I not offer. And again, it eliminates the need for dual maintenance. As soon as a feature is available in engineering, it's also available in the sales system, and then sales can define if they actually want to offer it on the websites for sale at this point in time. Besides that, because you have it in the same system, of course, it's easier to test and validate that the combinations of your product are still valid, that they work as you intended to. You can deploy the features when you need. As I used the example before, your documentation needs to be ready before you can deploy it to a certain market. Or you may need, if you're a hearing instrument provider, you may need to be able to have validated your product before you actually release it to a market. So thereby you can control that within the CLM solution. But it also offers the advantage to easily retract features. And for instance, for safety concerns or lack of supplies, we talked about yesterday, the semiconductor shortages or demand hearing instrument provider. They also have the example where if they need to pull a feature from the product, they do that in the CLM solution. And it will take, in a matter of hours, it's removed from the full global offering. Thereby, it significantly limits the risk of getting in configurations containing this feature or this functionality. And thereby, you don't need to disappoint the customer once the product needs to be delivered. The third use case I want to talk about is how you target the customer. And as Dave also said just before, well, customers today, even though they're B2B customers, they do expect to interact with you as they were B2C. They will typically do research in very many different ways. It may be through webinars, it may be through conferences like today. It may be just looking at your public website or picking up the phone and talk to your sales reps. And therefore, the information and the application that you define must be able to target multiple different user groups with different backgrounds, with different capabilities and different knowledge. Because if it doesn't do that, you may very quickly lose your customers' interest because they may not understand a highly technical configurator, for instance. So what is it CLM can help you with here? Well, the key bit here is really that you utilize the same logic across all the different channels that you have. You don't need to worry about if your rules and constraints are satisfied because the CLM system will ensure that for you. And thereby it allows sales and marketing to target different user groups, that be your public website, or it may be their own CPQ tool, or it may be something else, thereby making sure that you get the right information with the right details to the right group of people. And the key part you really benefit from this is that you allow your customers to engage and gain insight with you and your organization on their own, or through dealers, or through your internal sales teams. And thereby they can actually build up their interest and their needs by themselves. And the final use case I want to talk about is a little bit different, but that's actually customer service. So that's when you talk about what happens after the customer bought your product and how they're going to interact with you at that point. But simply because customer service is such a significant part of the customer experience, because this is the whole cycle where the customer uses your product. The sales cycle is typically fairly short compared to how long the product will live alive. So it may be stuff like pre-delivery and follow-ups. How do you ensure the customer is ready to receive the product and when will it happen? The delivery services, how is it installed? How is it maintained? But also, how does the customer receive support over time when they use the product? And how do they receive upgrades and maintenance of the product over time? And the key parts that CLM really can help you with here is, first of all, it covers the full configuration over time. It doesn't matter. You can look at a configuration of your product as it looked 10 years ago, or you can look at it as it will look 2 years from now. But that way you have the full visibility of your product as it looks. But it also gives you access to both the existing and current configurations from the relevant customers. So if a customer calls your help desk, the help desk can directly pull up the configuration exactly as it looks today, and say, okay, let's talk about it and let's find out how you do. But what it also offers is really that it offers you to add pre-delivery services directly through the configurator. So these are options that engineering would never think about or never need to think about. And a good example of this, one that I really, really like, is John Deere, who has this golden key offering in their products. And what that means is that when they buy the golden key, then they will be invited for an extensive factory tour where they will see the entire plant, see how their vehicles are produced, walk along with different employees from John Deere. And then by the end of the tour, they will get to drive their own vehicle off the production line. And that's, to me, really clever, because that's where you change your customer from just being the customer to being someone who's part of the journey of delivering the product and actually part of the whole process of the experience of this tool here. And why is that important? Well, if we look a little bit at the typical buying journey, then whenever a customer needs to go out and buy a product, well, there will be some trigger point. That will lead to an initial brand consideration, that may be through RFIs or through reviewing public websites. And then they'll go into this active evaluation. Once that happens, they may loop this for a while, but at some point they'll make a purchase decision. And this is now when you need to start building up your experience and building up the loyalty with your customers, because the more you can increase the experience the customer has here, the more loyal they will be. And then there is the likelihood that they will really stick on the right side of the screen here and keep buying from you whenever they need something new, if they need to decommission an existing product and have it replaced by something else. But at the same time, there is also the opposite scenario why you need to be aware of this. Because according to PwC, well then, if a customer experiences a bad experience with you as a supplier, then 30% of the customers will actually consider switching suppliers after just one bad experience. So obviously there's something you really need to be worried about, how you deliver good experiences, how you make sure that the customers get what they ask for and get what they need. So what I want to wrap up with here is just talk a little bit about why you need configuration lifecycle management to support this process and support your customer experience, because many of these things may be somewhat possible through your CPQ tools. But I think the key parts that I want to pull out here is about you want to allow multi-channel access to your product data. This way you enable your customers to actually drive their own interest and their own needs. They can go to your website, build up their insights, find out why this product is the right one for you, and thereby they will actually generate their own leads and thereby hopefully increase your win rates. CLM also allows you to follow the products. Both, as I said before, installed products, they will evolve over time. And CLM really enables your customer service to pull up and view the specific customer's product exactly as it was bought back in the day, but also how it was built, how was it manufactured and put together, but also how did it evolve over time, what parts of the product changed. And finally, then it will improve your collaboration in the organization. Because you centralize your configuration, then different functions, they can collaborate and define their product offerings in a very, in the same system. And that both reduces the time to market and the cost of maintenance, reduces dual maintenance, but it actually also gives the advantage that it will reduce the need for escalations and disappointing your customers if you can't deliver a product. And thereby, it should free up some time for your employees so they can work even more on improving your customer experience. Thank you.